So as I endeavor to continue to try to come to terms with the stumble on this car here, this is a two-wheel drive one, that's my all-wheel drive one. I'll compare the two with respect to when they're at idle here. Typically, once everything's warmed up and stable, it goes to about 730 RPM. So once it gets to 730 RPM, we'll actually compare the mass airflow, because it seems to me that this car, with the mass airflow, is low on it for potentially a couple of reasons. No sure, but you know, you work on a couple of theories. That's all you can really do. But again, let's let this stabilize it. The target idle desired speed is usually, the target idle is usually around 730. Again, once things are stable, once it's stable, we'll clock this figure. Okay, so we're there. Again, desired idle right around 730, and mass airflow jumping around a wee bit, but what would we say? See, jumping around there a bit. That might actually be a clue into what's going on, that pattern there, but let's call it 1.7 ish, the average figure, that bouncing around. Right, let's check the other car. Oh, sorry, I neglected to mention why I'm bothering with this. Check the fuel trim figures here. Not good. Synonymous with a intake manifold leak, yeah? Vacuum leak. I cannot find it. I've smoked the hell out of it at least 3 times. I cannot find it. I've been quite thorough in my visual inspection. I cannot find it with the smoke in the manifold. The trouble with smoke in the manifold is, of course, you're putting, although it's very, very low pressure, you're pressurizing the manifold. Sometimes things seal up with the pressure, and yet when the vacuum is exerted on it, it opens up. So it's really tricky to find. Don't know. We'll see. Okay, our control is now running. The data is streaming from my all-wheel drive car in the driveway here now. You can see desired idle 729, identical, and we're nearly there. That is quite a disparity, right? That is quite a disparity indeed. Let me toggle here. Just on paint here. So there's the live data there, guys. Let me actually show you it one more time. So let's call it 2.5. Let's call it 2.5 conservatively. Never mind about the scaling, it's slightly different, guys, only because it captured a different time frame. 1.7, that is a massive difference in mass airflow. That doesn't seem right to me. No, could false air account for the difference? Maybe, but you'd think if it was that big of a difference, I'd be able to find it. Again, I've smoked the manifold 3 times. I cannot find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the mass airflow from my car, which seems to be, oh sorry, one more time I'll show you the trim values on. Again, that is my son's car. That is the problem child at the moment. And look at the trim values, the trim on my car. Yeah, significantly different, right? So clearly something's up here. Yeah, I keep interrupting my train of thought here, but we're going to take the mass airflow from my car, slam it into this car, and just to remove the obvious, just in case there's an issue with the mass airflow sensor being skewed. That is an original equipment mass airflow. I don't recall what it is, Denso or maybe a Mitsubishi part or something. I don't recall. This is a Delphi part. This is an aftermarket mass air. Maybe it's obvious what the issue is here. I don't know. We'll swap it, see what the difference is. But you can see with the RPM being virtually identical, the desired idles identical, significant difference in the mass airflow. So here's the 2 sensors, guys. Again, that's the Delphi aftermarket sensor out of the problem child. Actually, in all honesty, I broke the original sensor a couple of years back pissing around with a car. Make stupid YouTube videos, but anyway, this is the original. As you can see, Suzuki, it's a Denso product. Maybe it's as simple as the aftermarket parts. Just know what to expect, you know. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? So let's swap it. I'll swap it into the housing here. Thankfully it's very simple, and we'll see what happens. That is the original Denso Suzuki part installed back in the problem child in my garage here, as you can see. Target idle. Quite a bit different. Never let it be said that I can't overcomplicate a simple matter. More importantly, look at the fuel trim numbers. Jesus Christ. Now, I'm very fortunate, guys. I have the capacity to swap between two cars. This, in fact, is why I have two identical cars. Because once you get to know the maintenance procedures, you know, you're familiar with it, it makes life much easier. You have the capacity to swap, for the most part, bits and pieces back and forth. They're not identical cars, as I said, all-wheel drive and a two-wheel drive. Clearly the drivetrain is completely different, as are some other subtle differences in the car. But I think this is pretty conclusive. More so, I mean, yes, there's a wee bit of differential there as far as the mass airflow is concerned. There's still a difference. I don't know, I'll do the math and put it on screen here. There's still a wee bit of a difference, but they're different cars. They're different mileage. You wouldn't expect them to be identical, or at least I wouldn't. What's important to me is that number is the same, so the speed of the engine is the same amount of air should be going through, roughly, right? Measured by the mass airflow sensor in grams per second. And more importantly, the fuel trims are back to normal. These were ridiculous before. Now they're back to normal. You know, that before was screaming to me, manifold, vacuum leak, manifold leak. I smoked it 3 times, I couldn't find shit, nothing. And now I see why I couldn't find anything, because there isn't one. Simply a matter of the mass airflow sensor being out of whack. Right, I'm going to leave this in the good one in my boy's car. I'll give that one to him. I'll buy a new sensor and put it in my car. Struggling student, you know the story. Well, let me just toggle back to the other screen here, guys, for a second, where I captured the data from the aftermarket mass airflow sensor. Again, the mass airflow sensor is one thing. Look at the fuel trim values at idle. Completely out of whack. This is the original OEM part, the Denso part, Suzuki part number, if you will. And look at the fuel trims, completely normal. Man, I was overthinking this something fierce. So I shouldn't actually take it for granted that everybody knows what this actually means, guys, right? So I'm not going to get into fuel trim and the general architecture behind it, but basically what was going on here was this is again is the paint. This is a snapshot from the original setup in the problem child, where it was only measuring 1.7 grams per second of air entering the engine, when we know that with a new sensor, when in fact it was more like 2.1. So the mass airflow sensor was telling the engine control module there was way less fuel going into the engine than in actual fact there was. Yeah, makes sense? It was telling it there was 1.7 when in fact there was 2.1. So the fuel would have been applied for 1.7 grams per second of air entering the engine in order to keep the stoichiometric balance in the air-fuel mixture. Well, clearly the oxygen sensor was saying, no, we don't have enough fuel. Again, because there was 2.1 grams of per second of air entering the engine. There wasn't enough fuel at the standard trim of 0.0. So that's why these numbers are severely elevated. This is reading low, so that the fuel trim is going to go towards rich, because there's not enough fuel for the actual amount of air, not the measured amount of air, but the actual amount of air was not being fueled enough in order to keep the O2 sensor happy. Hence, it was driving up both long-term and short-term fuel. I hope that makes some sense, guys. There's a wee bit behind this, beyond the scope of this video, but I thought I'd take a second to kind of explain what was going on here for the guys who are not too familiar with it. I'm not the sharpest guy in the world, guys, but I'm tenacious. You know, I keep at things until they begin to make some sense to me. Tenacity works for me. I was never gifted with being too sharp, but tenacity can take you a long way in life if you just keep at things. Keep trying to make them make sense. I can say that in hindsight now that I've kind of got it sorted. Just to close the video there, guys, the Delphi suspect sensor is in my car now, and you can see the fuel trim values that were close to 0 before. They are heading in the wrong direction, I can assure you. That one's they started near 0, but they're climbing significantly now. And what was it, 2.6 in my car? You can see quite erratic, and at times going below 2. Yeah, clearly not good. Thank you very much to everybody who made a suggestion, whether it be in the previous videos or in my post. Some of you guys, you got it right, said it was the mass airflow sensor from the get-go. And even if you didn't get it right, it's appreciated your input, because it's good to discuss things and just gets the conversation going. You know, there's not too many of these cars out there anymore, so for the guys who can put some input in, it's greatly appreciated. That's it, boys. Cheers.